November is just around the corner, and that means the 16th Annual National Podcast Post Month is fast approaching. Hi, I'm Jennifer Navarrete, founder of NaPodPomo, and I'm inviting you to join the 30-day Global Podcasting Challenge. Whether you're a newbie looking to start your first podcast or a seasoned pro seeking inspiration, NaPodPomo is the perfect place to experiment and try new things. Visit napodpomo.org to learn more. See where podcasting can take you this November during National Podcast Post Month.
First off, finish your book. Get rid of all that worry, because that is what will cause you to not really be able to write an inspired work because you're too worried about what's going to happen next. But what I do like to say to a lot of authors, that there is a lot more available than you could ever know to get your book published. We look at the big publishers right now. There's so much competition. You have to try to hire an agent. And even so, you could have a fantastic manuscript. You could have the perfect book. But because they're not looking for your perfect book, it will never get published. And so that can feel really daunting to someone, feeling like, well, I've just gotten nothing but rejection letters. Nobody wants what I have to say. And that's actually just simply not true. There's just the way they work. They might just be looking for a specific type of genre with a specific type of hero. And yours just didn't fit the mold. And it had nothing to do with whether it was good enough or not.
Okay, everyone, welcome to the podcast. Nice to have you back. I have someone that's been on my screen before, and I'm always happy to talk to a guest again and again and again. Maybe just every day. I'm fine with that. Angela is back again to chat about all things writing and authorship, and we've got some great topics to talk about today. Angela's here, a great guest. You're going to learn a lot, and I'm always happy to have her here. Angela, welcome back to the podcast. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you for having me back. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And really, I so enjoyed being able to chat with you last time. So I'm excited to be back.
Right. So that's cool. When I was like that, so when I get to talk to somebody more than once, I don't know, it's just like a special spot for me. I feel like we had a great conversation. And again, we'll have links back. That was episode 257.
Yes.
Of Living the Next Chapter. So make sure you go check that out. We'll have links always, of course. AngelaRHughes.com is the website. Tell us a little bit more for those who haven't heard episode 257 yet, which they should. Again, take us back. Explain who you are in this great big world of ours. And talk us through the website, AngelaRHughes.com. Give us an overview.
Well, I am a historical fantasy author and currently just finished the third book in a trilogy. Actually looking forward to starting another book, just anxiously. My fingers are ready to type the keys and get started on a whole another series. So I'm excited about that. I'm a mother of two and I have a wonderful husband. I live in Waco, Texas, and I am a writing coach. And that's something that I really am passionate about because I know how it was for me as a new author. I know what it was like trying to overcome all of the obstacles of being a writer for the first time and getting over just feeling pretentious about the whole thing. And you can find me on AngelaRHughes.com. And on that website, you'll find all of the things that you want to find, all of the nerdy fantasy facts that I love to put out there, as well as my books and also any details about me as a writing coach.
Amazing. And today we're going to be talking about being a writing coach, some publishing stuff, even helping others through fiction, and completing your manuscript. I just actually met with your cohort. Stephanie and I had a great conversation.
Yes.
And she's going to be coming on to an episode as well. So I feel like the whole team is getting together here. And everyone's kind of coming in, and I love this. Your relationship with Stephanie, tell me about that relationship and how that happened, too.
Well, it's amazing. She is an amazing high fantasy writer. I would encourage you to check out her books, The Conjurer's Curse, on Amazon. And we actually met it was serendipitous a little bit. I had just started writing my books. I had never written before. I felt a little just out of my element. She had actually been writing books for a while, but never knew what to do with her books, how to get published, what the next steps were. So she had all of these books just kind of sitting on her laptop at home. And a friend of ours knew that we were both writing and introduced us. We had coffee and the rest was history. We became close friends, and it was through our friendship, honestly, where we both ended up finding our publishers, completing our books, and discovering the whole world of publishing. And now here we are together, and we do a podcast called The Ink Mages. And I can't tell you, it's been so fun and honestly a lot more natural. Like, came together really naturally for the both of us to just begin to be our fantasy selves and talk about all things writing, storycraft, and fantasy. So we've been doing that. We're now 4 episodes in, and we've got some interviews lined up, and we're really excited to keep rolling with that.
So make sure you take a look at your analytics. Some guy in Canada, hand raised, has been listening to the podcast. So there you go.
Yay!
It's me. I'm one of your listeners. So it's a great show. The two of you have great chemistry together. I love how you go back and forth. And you don't write exactly the same thing. Mm-hmm. So you get 2 perspectives on the same topic that you're talking about, which is unique.
Yes.
I like that. When I listen to some podcasts and it's 2 people who agree on everything, right, or have the same opinion on everything, it's like, do we need 2 people? Like, because you guys are like, hey, I love chicken soup. I like chicken soup. Next topic. I like baseball. I like baseball. It's like, okay, is there a different perspective? Do you have a different insight? And I love how the 2 of you kind of talk about the same topic, but you kind of approach it from your lens and how you do it and what inspires you and excites you about the topic. Great podcast.
Thank you.
Many more episodes to come, I know. So, yeah, that's really cool. So, okay, on a side note, little tangent, for authors who I've met with a few this week, so that's why it's fresh in my mind. Authors who are toying with the idea of a podcast in relation to their writing. Is there a good connection there? Do you see some synergy back and forth between the two? What's your advice to a new author when they're in the process of writing? Is a podcast, does that kind of fit in with the plans for a new author? What do you think?
Absolutely. And I think we always have more to say than we realize about the things that we're doing in our life, especially if you're a writer. You're a storyteller already. You should be a storyteller if you're writing stories. And I think it's a great way to expose your books, expose your storytelling ability, and really even come alongside other authors and writers and tell their stories. And I can't stress how important it is to be on YouTube and other social medias, even as an author, to get your books seen and out there. There is a big wide world of other fiction and fantasy authors out there that are out there promoting their books. And it is a really good tool to get yourself seen and your story to inspire others. And honestly, and I thank you for your encouragements and all of the details that you have encouraged us to do with our podcast. It wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. I think both Stephanie and I, we had been talking about doing the podcast, and it just seemed like a hard thing to do. Once we started and we started recording our first episode, everything just kind of fell into place, little pieces, and it became something that was fun for us and not hard. And we've got a lot of people who have given us some great comments on our podcast, who have been excited to hear about our stories and have been encouraged by what we've been talking about. So that in and of itself is helpful.
So I have a little side comment on that as well. One thing about having a podcast is you're on the microphone and you're talking. Yes, there's not a crowd in front of you. I get that. So that's kind of safe, where it's just you and Stephanie in your podcast. But as a podcaster, you get to learn how to take your thoughts and present them in an easy way for people to understand and consume. And so for me and my wife, Jennifer, we have a podcast together, and she recently got promoted into a new job role. She's now the manager of her department where she was an employee. She's moved up the ranks. Wow. in her first few group meetings where she was the lead and she had to speak in front of 30, 40 people, she used to be one of those 40 people. Now she's the leader talking. And she's not overtly, she's an extrovert, but she's not overtly verbal in that kind of setting. And she was a little timid. And over time, being on the podcast, she gained experience and she was able to think. And she grew as a person by having a podcast.
Yeah.
And she would go back to her boss and do the, she would then present now that she'd been doing podcasts. And her boss pulled her aside and went, Jennifer, what's different about you? Like when you first started, you were really timid and quiet and you didn't project. And now you're like completely different. And she's like, well, I have a podcast and I talk to X number of countries per year and per episode. And I've been doing this for a while. And you get her boss is like a podcast. I'm like, yeah. So you get to grow as a podcaster and you get to learn more about yourself in the process, right?
Yes,
Are you finding that for yourself?
Absolutely. I mean, I think both of us, again, we started it kind of scared. We're like, do we have anything to say of value? Would people really want to listen to us? And I think that even just the second episode in, we're like, wow, look at what we can do. And just what we do is we just kind of organize our thoughts as far as this is what we're going to discuss. Here's some of the topics. Let's stay on topic. And we just kind of keep tossing it back to each other. That's our formula. I'm like, you go, then you toss it to me. I'll toss it back to you. And it's amazing how much, especially when you learn to relax and it's just the two of us having a conversation, how there's just a plethora of things to say and talk about. And hopefully people find that interesting. But I definitely... I'm a public speaker, so I've had a lot of experience in public speaking, and I love it. Actually, I have a hard time sometimes keeping my mouth shut. that's something I have to learn, like self-control. Like, actually, you've spoken. Now it's time to be quiet. But I know for Stephanie that was a newer thing, and so I can see even now that we've had a few episodes recorded that she's even gaining in confidence and going, it's about relaxing and really just having confidence about what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think it helps to become a better listener. Where typically we have this little contraption in our hands called a phone.
Yeah.
And people are talking to us and we're half listening, we're half not listening. And they finish their statement and you're like, what was that? That's so frustrating, right? To be so distracted by this thing we carry in our hands all the time. And then for me, selfishly for editing, I like to be quiet so that I don't have to do edits. You don't need me going, the whole time you're talking. That's just quite annoying after a while. So I just stay quiet. So I'm learning to be a better listener just by having a podcast. So if any of those things for you as a new author help encourage you to maybe say, hey, maybe I should try this. You'll be a better listener. You'll be a better speaker. It'll help you when you promote your book. And it's a good resource. So let's switch gears. Let's talk about being a writing coach. I would love for you to define for me what kind of personality trait, what kind of thing would you say makes a great writing coach? What is it about a good writing coach that you can identify from a writing coach that maybe not quite as effective? What makes a good coach?
I think being passionate to see other people succeed, recognizing, I think a good coach is someone that isn't so into what they're doing, that it's all about them and what their successes are. It's more about taking the experience that you've gained and helping others leap. Because I don't know, we can all be successful in our own right. We all can learn and grow, become authors. But for me, those skills, I couldn't have been where I was without other people encouraging me and telling me what I needed to do along the way. And since being an author, I have met so many people who have a passion for writing. They have stories in them just begging to be told, but they don't know how. They don't know how to get there. They don't even know how to put their keys to the keyboard. And being a coach, for me, I hear those people and I have a desire to pull out of them all that gold that's just sitting in a treasure chest inside of them. It bothers me when I see treasure sitting there and somebody who's ill-equipped to know how to open it and start pulling out that treasure. And so for me, I'm very passionate about seeing people equipped, teaching them that they are teachable, that they can learn, that maybe if they don't have the skill, they can gain that skill. So really even more than just the skill, it's the person themselves learning to become confident. And I love seeing people grow. I feel like I get to almost have a jewel in my crown when somebody else comes to life and they're able to become their best self and do what they're passionate about. And I got to be a part of that process. So I think as a coach, it's important to have that value for other people. It's not about making money or even bettering myself. It's about seeing the world grow. And I think I said this in last podcast, but it's not a competition. It's we're sitting at a table where there's enough food for everybody. That's how I look at things. There's enough room for everyone to be creative, to grow, and to do amazing things. And so for me, I've always had this idea that I want to invite people to the table and show them all of the things that are available for them. But again, a lot of people don't know what is available to them. They don't know how to get there. And that's the most daunting thing, is going, I don't even know how to start writing my book because I don't know where I would go from there. I don't even know if I'm a good enough writer. All of those things that come in that hinder you are the things that I try to shake free and say, well, I can tell you. So you get that piece of the puzzle, and then you can now feel like you can write because you're not clueless anymore. Okay.
So what's it like to work with a coach then? What are some of the things that a coach can do for an author that they can't do for themselves?
I think, when it really comes down to it, for some people, especially in the world of writing, they want to know if they even have chops. And for me, when I start with someone, if they've even written a chapter or a few, pages of something, to be able to look at what they've done and help them know what they can do to grow, or help them know what they're doing well, maybe what they can correct, but just getting them writing. But for me as a coach, also what I hear from a lot of people is, well, I just don't have time. And for me, it's really helping people take control of their time, take control of their schedule, taking importance and value in what they've been given. I really feel like if you don't take control of your schedule, it will run away with you. And there's so much importance in what we've been given. I think a lot of people find writing to be a hobby, and hobbies are great. Hobbies, be creative. There's a lot of things that are worth just having as hobbies. But if there's a story in you that you've wanted to write and it's eating away at you, that's no longer a hobby. It's a calling. And I really work with people to help them understand, like, this isn't a hobby. This isn't something you are doing for fun. This is something you need to understand you've been called to do. And so then it becomes important for you to actually begin to walk out that calling and put your pen to the paper or your fingers to the keyboard and start writing it. Because as long as you're thinking of it as a hobby, it's something that can be pushed to the wayside instead of made as a priority to learn and grow. Just like I think I used this illustration last time, learning to play the violin. It could be a hobby or it can be a passion.
Right.
But we don't always start, as experts. We have to be willing to grow. And so that's kind of where I start with them, like helping them understand, this is way more than just a cute, sweet idea. You've got a calling. You've got something that you're passionate enough that you wanted to actually start investing in yourself to begin to write and become an author. And it really is a transformation. I like to say, I'm a woman, I'm a mother, I couldn't have been a mother without, being pregnant, going through the transformation. And then on the other side, now I'm a mom. And I think it's the same thing with being a writer and author. You got to start. You have to start allowing that to transform you as you write and you start making priority and you put it as something that's essential. We really do have time for the things that are important to us. And I guess with a lot of the authors and writers that I work with, that's kind of what I help them discover is is this a priority for you? Because if it is, then you will find time. And for me, I had, when I first started writing my books, 2 really small children. And I really was very busy. And I really did have a lot occupying my time. I homeschooled, I cooked all the meals. I was very, very busy. 2 little children, taking up a lot of my time. And so I chose to not watch television for an entire year. I turned off my TV every night. I would put the kids down because it became important to me to write. And I think that's the thing. How important is it? Do we really need to have all of the extras to fill in the void? Because I can tell you that for me, sometimes the glass of wine or the show or the movie that I think is going to fulfill me so much for the moment, it's like for the moment, yeah, I'm relaxed. I get to indulge for a few minutes and then wake up the next day and still feel like I never started anything. And when I would remove that from my schedule, and that's what I had to do, it actually gave me more value for my life and actually more peace. And I didn't necessarily need all of the extra cushiony stuff that, to rest and unfold and unwind. I felt like I was doing something with my time. And of course I'd have days off, it wasn't every single night, but I made a priority, and I help authors and writers figure out what does that look like for them? Because everyone's unique. I can't get up early in the morning and write. That's just not going to happen for me. I'm not that type of person. And so looking at each individual person and looking at what's realistic for them and helping even to encourage and create that accountability for them to start the writing process.
Amazing. So when you were starting your author journey, who was that person for you, that inspiration, that coach? Who was that person that helped you in the early days?
Certainly, Bray Wyckoff was a huge inspiration for me. He is the executive director of Kingdom Writers Association, and that's something that you can join on Facebook if you're a writer. And he coaches authors and writers. And that was one of the first steps I took, was hiring a writing coach for myself. I had not finished my book, but I'd had a few chapters written, and I did a 3-chapter review with him, and that was invaluable. Out of that, I ended up joining Kingdom Writers. I am now also a part of the executive team of Kingdom Writers. And nice. I also help equip writers in that way. And now I'm friends and have this accountability with Bray Wyckoff and Jill Wyckoff and their whole community of writers. But I also have to say it was in relationship with my friend Stephanie Cotta. We were doing this together. We were writing, we were encouraging each other, and we had that accountability. When she'd say, I just did 3 more chapters, I kind of went, well, I want to finish 3 more chapters, just that the fact that we were going the same direction. And I think sometimes in a coach that if you can't find that person, that's part of the value of the package, is that I'm there going, hey, I want to see what you've done. I want to see what you produced. I want to encourage you, make you feel like you're setting goals and reaching them. And there's somebody there that's actually excited about the wind that's in your sails.
So I picture a new author in a cabin out in the forest with a candlestick and a pen or pencil and a piece of paper, trying to hash out this book, write this book. They're all by themselves. There's no community. There's no interaction. They feel alone in their journey of writing their book. And here comes Angela as a coach, a writing coach. Talk about the whole idea of community around authors, and how important is it to be in community? Like you mentioned Stephanie many times.
Yeah.
How important is it to have that community aspect as an author? Can we just do it ourselves? Do we have to have community, or what's the benefit?
I think for some individuals, maybe you can. I've learned just as a creative in general. So before I even started writing books, I was a painter. And before even that, I used to be a professional ballerina. So I've done a lot in the arts. And I think there's this I think it's a lie that tells artists that this is a very independent, individual, lonely thing that you're doing. That all of your inspiration comes from you sitting in a corner and being moody and depressed. And, right. And I have actually discovered the opposite. The more community I have, the more alive I become, the more muses and inspirations stir my imagination. I find that loneliness and doing things solitary all by yourself can actually keep you handcuffed. Now, I'm sure it does work for some people. I've actually told my husband a few times, I'm like, it would be really nice if I could just afford an Airbnb for the weekend. You stay home with the kids. I'll go and write and just have some quiet time. That would be like a dream of mine, but that wouldn't be where I'd want to stay. I have a friend who I helped walk through publishing, and she doesn't have the availability to ever have quiet in her life. Her kids are even younger than mine, and she has two burly boys that like to, jump off of sofas and, run into walls. And she said, I had to learn, and she said it was a skill I didn't have before, but I had to learn to write in chaos. And that was a skill she had to gain. I had to learn how to put on noise canceling headphones and write because I can't be disturbed with noise. But I think there are skills that can be gained. But for me, with community, I just don't think I would be where I am. And I really think for a lot of creatives, if they understood that community actually gives birth to imagination. I don't know if you've ever sat around a table of people who love the same thing as you. Like whenever I sit with somebody and I'm having dinner with them and we start talking about history. I know you said you loved history too. We start going down that road of like medieval times and the, old European history, man, I can get so nerdy. If somebody else is willing to talk to me about that, I can go, we could chat, we could talk, because we've inspired something in each other that we both light up about. And it's the same thing when you get two authors in the room that are writing the same genre. They start talking about fantasy. Let's say for me, I think that's why our podcast is so centered on fantasy, because that's what lights Stephanie and I up. And when we meet other fantasy authors, it's like we think the same. We're weird. We're different. We don't think like everybody else. So you get us in the same room talking about fantasy and talking about storycraft, and we will light up and just start inspiring one another with our conversation. And then I go home and write. And I don't know how many, one of my best examples of two creatives in a room changing the world is C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien. They were having dinner. I love this conversation. They were having, J.R. Tolkien had a meeting with his editor, and she said, you need to write a book like The Hobbit. And you need to have, he hadn't even started writing Lord of the Rings. You need to write a book. And he was like, I don't know. I don't even know what story to write. I don't know what more to say about hobbits than I already said in the book, The Hobbit. And he was having this conversation with C.S. Lewis, and C.S. Lewis said, I notice that in The Hobbit is the best when he's not doing hobbity things. And that one line from C.S. Lewis was enough for J.R. Tolkien to go, you're right. My hobbits need to not be doing hobbity things. And he went off to write The Lord of the Rings. And that came from C.S. Lewis, not J.R. Tolkien. And in fact, that is a huge inspiration of mine, is they had a group of Imagineers that would go and drink at a pub and smoke cigars and talk about their creative projects and their creative writing. And look at these two authors that have had such an impact on fantasy writing because they bothered to sit in a room and mull over their imaginative ideas together. And I think that is a good example of why creatives need to be in the same room together, why writers need to be in the same room together, and why somebody maybe would need a coach if they're alone in it. They've never done it before. Maybe they've never found anybody like-minded to help them along the way, because we do need a community. We need to be inspiring each other. I feel like our creativity actually has more wings and more effect when other people's hands have been a part of the process.
Mm-hmm. I heard somebody say, or talking about this, and I really love it, is that the idea that there's wisdom in the counsel of many.
Yes.
And I love that idea. Like that big table, everyone sharing ideas and what you can pick up on and how it can change your world. That's a great example from Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. That's great. That's amazing.
Yes.
So, okay, we could probably do a 5-hour podcast just on this alone, but on your publishing your book and all of this, can we do like a 101 for new authors listening to the show going, a deer in the headlights. I have no idea about publishing. I just know I'm working on my book. What happens after that, I'm clueless.
Yeah.
And I don't have a coach right now, which I should. But can you walk us through publishing and just give us kind of that overview? And again, like we could go deep, deep, deep in this, but I just want to give listeners and new authors that are listening just a taste of, here's some things to look out for. As I know, one person I talked to, one author, they're just concerned about owning their book. They want to own their work.
Yes.
And what happens if you hand it off? Can you just give us some insight on that?
Yes. First off, finish your book. Get rid of all that worry, because that is what will cause you to not really be able to write an inspired work because you're too worried about what's going to happen next. But what I do like to say to a lot of authors, that there is a lot more available than you could ever know to get your book published. We look at the big publishers right now. There's so much competition. You have to try to hire an agent. And even so, you could have a fantastic manuscript. You could have the perfect book. But because they're not looking for your perfect book, it will never get published. And so that can feel really daunting to someone, feeling like, well, I've just gotten nothing but rejection letters. Nobody wants what I have to say. And that's actually just simply not true. There's just the way they work. They might just be looking for a specific type of genre with a specific type of hero. And yours just didn't fit the mold, and it had nothing to do with whether it was good enough or not. There's a lot of hybrid publishers out there. If you feel like you really, really, really want to be traditionally published, I would suggest getting on Twitter, because Twitter has a lot of places that you can submit your book to agents. And they do these whole days where you can do kind of submit and try to get picked up. My friend Stephanie Cotta got picked up that way by a fantastic publisher. And there are publishers out there that will publish your book and only hold on to your rights for a certain amount of time. So it really does depend on the publisher. However, on the other side of that, there is self-publishing. And there are hybrid self-publishers where you basically essentially have a publisher come in alongside you and publish your work, but you pay for it so that you maintain your rights. And you do have to be careful when you get into those kind of hybrids. You want to make sure you're actually paying somebody legitimate to do your research. I definitely I have a list of publishers that are hybrid that I highly recommend, that are great ones to go ahead and get involved with. What I will be offering soon as well, and as part of my service, is a consultation, which will include kind of a publishing package. And because I don't know if I've said this, but I actually work for a publisher. So I know the entire process of publishing inside and out. And one of the things that a lot of people who self-publish don't know is they don't know how to necessarily specifically design their book for their genre, and that can keep people from buying it. And that's where a lot of people get daunted with self-publishing, because you put your book out there, it's apparently been self-published, and maybe people are not as willing to give you a shot. But if you look like you have been professionally published, they're not going to know that you haven't been professionally published. And so I like to equip and help people understand there is a way to self-publish. No one would ever know that you were not professionally published. You essentially become your own publisher. And it's all about the logo and the cover design and having a proper interior format. And those are things that can be learned and gained, things that I can help you with. And you can have a published piece that has been professionally published by you and doesn't have all of the broken pieces that give people that red flag. And I think it's also understanding how to properly market your piece, even before your book is ready, before it's been published and released to the world. For me, I wouldn't say that I love marketing. I didn't know that being an author meant that I was going to be a marketer, but that was one of the things. And that's what I help coach people understand, is this is something you get to learn. This is a skill that is essential. And it's not as hard as it seems. You just have to take it a chunk at a time. Don't take the whole enchilada. Right. Take one little bite, conquer that one, and then take the next bite. Once your book is published, you have something that can be marketed and put out in front of the world forever. So it's not once and done. It's forever. You can find ways to put your work out there for people to see. But it is possible to publish, maintain all your rights, and do it totally properly without, spending more money than you need to, without having to give a publisher all of your rights just so that somebody out there can read your book. I own all the rights to my books, and I'm happy I've done it that way. And they look beautiful. I love my books.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Okay, what about just working with illustrators and cover design? Is there any tips on that as well? I see you perk up there.
Yes.
Because I'm just thinking, if I want to do a series of books and I want to have a similar look and feel to each one, and they're going to be written over a 3-year period, how do I retain my artists to help me in the future? Because I want to have that same look and feel. How do I navigate reaching out and finding an amazing artist who won't break any copyright?
Yes.
And they know they're making it for me? What do I do? Any tricks?
Well, the first thing with cover, so illustration second, but cover first, do your research on covers. Go onto Amazon, look up your specific genre. You don't want to be too creative with your cover. You want to duplicate what's already selling. You can be creative, but you can't be creative outside the box. It just doesn't work. So you want to look at the best top selling. So for my book, I wouldn't just look up fantasy. I would look up historical fantasy books that are selling on Amazon and look at the examples that are there before me. And then what I like to let people know is the industry is changing with cover art. You no longer have to pay $600, $700, $800 to get your cover designed. You can go somewhere like 100covers.com or getcovers.com. And as long as you've educated yourself and you understand how a cover should look, they do a fantastic job and you own everything.
Wow.
So, and my covers were done by 100covers.com. They are professional. They understand what a marketing a cover should look like for marketing. They work with you. You get to go back and refine your cover as many times as you want to, and it doesn't cost you an arm and a leg. They're really, really, really an amazing company. For illustration, that one, for me personally, in my experience, I don't do children's books, so that's a whole nother ball of wax. You can find illustrators for children's books on Fiverr, and I highly recommend Fiverr for any author looking for any kind of work done in your book. There are a lot of artists and editors and interior formatters on Fiverr that will not only do the work for you, but they will give you the originals and the rights to it. So I currently have a illustrator that she does a few black and white book cut pictures for the interiors of my book. She's amazing. She's in Albania, and she gives me the entire file when she's done. I purchased it. I own it. And I tell you, one illustration, fully detailed, beautiful, $50 on Fiverr.
Wow.
It is amazing who you can find on Fiverr. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that you are hiring people sometimes outside the US. So you're paying a little cheaper price because of the exchange of monies and the different values in different countries. But fantastic artists all over the place. And you can actually look at a lot of their sample designs and really interview them before you hire them. So you don't have to worry about hiring somebody that maybe isn't going to do a good job for you. I've had nothing but success with Fiverr. And this particular artist, she also does cover designs for $300 fully illustrated, which again is to get a illustrated cover can cost thousands of dollars. But there are people on Fiverr that will illustrate your cover for much, much less and do a professional job, and you own it. I actually give credit to all of my designers in my book and on my copyright page. I don't have to, but I do because I feel like their designs deserve the credit for all of the beautiful work that they've done for me. But again, do your research. Know what a book should look like when you self-publish. And again, that's part of my service is if you don't know, I'll help you. I will help you understand what a book should look like in your genre, so that as it's being designed, as the interior format's going out there, you don't have any oopsies and have it published and go, oh man, the interior totally doesn't look right, or this cover isn't selling. I actually had to go through 2 covers. My first book, Eleanor and the Song of the Bard, I had a fantastic artist that I paid lots of money to do the design on my cover, and it turned out really beautiful. But my book was not initially selling very well because the cover looked like a romance. And I didn't realize how important it was to not just do a beautiful cover design, because now people who wanted to read epic fantasy weren't picking up my book because it looked like it was a romance book. So I had to completely redesign the cover. And as much as that was painful, that taught me so much about cover design and what books should look like, along with working with a publishing company that gives you a lot of knowledge as well. But I really specialize, and I let people know who want to actually get detailed publishing advice from me, that I specialize in fantasy. So that really is my niche and my genre, that I understand a lot about and feel very confident with.
I think a potential future guest for your show is your Albanian illustrator.
Oh,
have her on your podcast. Have them on.
Fantastic.
And speak to them.
Yes.
And promote them, and
that's a great
have
idea.
them on and meet with them. That would be an amazing interview to hear that.
Yes.
Because you get to do that. I had an author come on, and she was talking about her audiobook. It was voiced by a voiceover artist, and I was telling the author, you should start a podcast, and your first guest should be your audio voiceover person, because they actually read your book and gave your book life.
Yes.
So she's like, you know what? I'm going to do that. And she did it. She brought her on right away. And what a great full circle moment, right? To be on camera talking like this with the person who voiced your book.
That's
true. And it's like, this is so cool that I get to talk to you, because the voiceover artist had to do multiple voices for the book beyond the main character. And she voiced some things differently than the author had envisioned, but it all worked. And it was a really cool moment to have the author and the voiceover actor together on the same show.
Wow.
What a cool moment, right? So,
that would be a cool moment. Actually, I love that you suggested that, because I've worked so much with this artist. I've never gotten to meet her or speak to her. It would be an absolutely fabulous thing to get to talk to her.
I would love to be the fly on the wall for that one.
Yes.
That'd be fun. That'd be really, really fun. Amazing. So, okay, before we let you go, anything else we haven't touched on that's really top of mind for you right now when we're talking to new authors? We know we need a writing coach. We've got some good information on publishing. Podcasting is a good avenue for our writing journey. Anything else we haven't touched on that you're like, I think we would have missed this opportunity if we didn't touch this as well?
You know, I just always like to put out there, just start. Just start. Don't be worried about all the details. One of the things that I've learned in my life is that the yellow brick road isn't discovered until you start walking down it. There's so many things that have happened in my life. My life has entirely changed by becoming an author. I'm a totally new human, totally new realities in my life. I'm working for a publisher. I'm a writing coach. I'm helping people publish. I've got 3 books written. None of this I would have discovered if I hadn't just started. And I think sometimes we were daunted because we want to see the whole picture. We want to have it all laid out for us. We want to know what it's all going to look like. Some people, I just want to know if I'm going to be successful. And I just want to encourage people, hey, don't even start with that. If you've got a story, write it. Just start writing, because there's a whole world that you're going to discover just by beginning, and it will change you. It will change you however it's meant to change you. By the end of the process, you will discover things. And, a lot of people always ask me, they're like, did you get all your money back that you invested into your book? And I said, that is actually the point. Sure, would I love to make a lot more money? And I'm doing all right. But I would really encourage people that it really, when it came down to it, wasn't about all of the money and the return and the sales. It was more about becoming the person I was meant to become. And it was to write those books and discover a whole nother layer. And so, being willing to invest in yourself isn't always just about a return financially. Sometimes it's a bigger return than you initially thought it could be.
Awesome. Let's talk again about the website and where should we go? We mentioned some great resources on the episode today. Where do we go on the website? Can we find some of these resources we mentioned? What do we do and where do we go?
Well, you can go to AngelaRHughes.com, and on there, if you go to my contact page, you will be able to find some resources about me as a coach. If you go to my Linktree, also Linktree, Angela R. Hughes, there's even more resources there. If you go to Fiverr, you will also find me on Fiverr. I am a writing coach on Fiverr at Eleanor Blue, and that's ELANOR Blue. And I would just even say for those who are interested in looking at Fiverr, don't be intimidated. Just start browsing around. Let's look and see what's available there. If you're an author, there is an endless amount of resources of really amazing professionals on there that could help you get your book published.
Amazing. Angela, thank you. Eleanor, thank you for being here. I love it. Great information. And I know that we're going to be talking more in the future, which makes me happy. And like I said, we're having Stephanie's going to come on for her own episode here as well. So we're having like a dueling podcast co-host battle back and forth. Who's next on the show? And then we want to talk podcasting as well with the two of you, I'm looking forward to that conversation to get your insight on podcasting with your friend and what that looks like and how you do it, because I know there's a lot of podcasters who want to learn from you as well. So thank you for being so willing to share your time and your expertise. And there's so much great stuff here. I know we're going to talk more in the future, so let's keep that door open. But thank you again for making time to be on the podcast again.
Thank you so much. It was so fun to be back again.
So did we do good the second time, or what do you think? Did it beat the first one, or what?
I have so much fun talking to you. And I think, like what you said, you're a really good listener. And I think that's what I loved so much about the first podcast even was I was like, you pulled out stuff in me that I hadn't really talked about on other podcasts that made me feel like that was a really special podcast. So I think you're a really good listener. And I think it's really fun to talk to you. And I thought that this podcast was a lot of fun to do as well.
Okay. So there you go. So everyone listening, if you're still here with us, thank you. That's not kind of you to say that. But I find that the best podcasts are based on amazing guests. So you make it easy. So thank you so much for being here and being part of the show. Okay, well, thank you for being here on Living the Next Chapter. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We enjoyed having you here on the podcast. Our authors are amazing. I hope you appreciate their time, their effort to make this possible. If you know an author, if you want to recommend an author, that's a good idea. Hey, if there's an author that you really would love to hear about or hear from, if you tell me, if you send me a message, you speak pipe on our website, livingthenextchapter.com, send me an email, go over to livingthenextchapter.com, send us a message. We will forward your message to that author and say, listen, you are being requested to be on Living the Next Chapter. Our audience can't wait to hear from you. You can help shape the show. Yeah, you. You could do that right now, actually. You got a minute, right? Okay, how about you do that? livingthenextchapter.com. I'll see you over there. Recommend an author. Yeah. See you. Thanks.